And the Bucs hope that this will be their first victory ever.
We have a great area, growing area, in Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Sarasota, Bradenton, Lakeland, and Winter Haven, and even Wauchula. Over 2 million fans, and it's the fastest growing area in the United States.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, live from Tampa Stadium. For the first time ever in a regular season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers enter the stadium with numbers in both the win and loss columns. The Buccaneers came onto the field to a wild standing ovation from the some 60,000-plus fans at Tampa Stadium. They did not introduce any players individually. The PA announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers."
Welcome to San Diego, California. Super Bowl 37. It is Tampa Bay versus the Oakland Raiders. Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up the middle. It's intercepted at the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, baby! Boom, boom, boom! Yeah! Tom Brady signing with the Tampa Bay Bucs tomorrow. Holy hell. Tom Brady going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's going to be a tough team to stop, I think, at this point.
He said, "You know what ring is my favorite one? My favorite ring is the next one." Everyone always says, "Why the Bucs, man? Why'd you choose the Bucs?" And it was a no-brainer.
Brady has all kinds of time. Throws toward the end zone. It is a caught ball. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Mike Evans. 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Brady to throw. Throws a deep pass downfield. Got Scotty Miller in the open. Makes the catch. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Here's the snap out of the gun. Play action fake pass to Gronkowski. He's going to score a touchdown. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Holy guacamole. And the Buccaneer Nation will celebrate. And I want to hear cannons.
We do.
I want to hear cannons.
For sure.
And I think we are going to hear cannons. If I got to do the boom, boom, boom myself. Bucs win. Bucs win. Bucs win the Super Bowl 55. Tom Brady engineers the offense. The Buccaneers score late in the first half, early in the second half. And there the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them. How about the Buccaneers, huh?
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty, Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
Edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, live on YouTube today for episode 203. It is our Week 2 game preview, the first division game of the year for Tampa Bay. We see the Atlanta Falcons coming off of a 32-6 loss. Well, they're coming to Ray J, so hopefully the Buccaneers are ready. We're going to break down that game top to bottom here shortly, but welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself, Mr. Evan Wanish. How you doing today, my friend? Happy Thursday.
Yeah, it is Thursday. Almost at the end of the week. We're almost there. So, yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I won't lie to you. I am dog tired from work. I'm sure I've mentioned it on the podcast before this point, but for those who don't know, I started a new job recently, and I'm basically just, a delivery driver. But holy hell, it is not as easy as I remember it being when I did it previously. So, we're kind of working around the new schedule. Some days are harder than others, but we're getting through it because that's what champions do, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, right now, checking out our YouTube chat. James is in the chat, unfortunately.
Oh, man.
Cartier Walker is in the chat also. What's up, man? If you guys are in the chat, let us know. I know this is a little we said we were going to do it Thursday, Friday. Didn't really say a time. So if you guys are tuning in right now, thank you a lot. And we're going to have a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get rolling over the course of the stream. I feel like when we usually do these unannounced game previews or just any live stream in general, over the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, people start to flood in here, and that's what we like to see, right? So glad to have you guys here as part of our live YouTube audience checking in. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Plenty of great Buccaneers content throughout the course of the season. So this Sunday's matchup, September 19th, 4:05 p.m. kickoff. It's going to be on Fox, so maybe we have a chance of Chris Myers calling it. Nothing confirmed yet, but would love to hear Chris Myers early on in the season because we had to wait all the way till Week 17 last year to hear him call a Bucs game. We did get the preseason action, though. But, yeah, first division game of the year for Tampa Bay. Like I mentioned before, Atlanta coming in off of that ugly 32-6 loss against Philly. And I'll say this, let's jump right into it. As far as Atlanta's concerned, they just lost 32-6 last week. Seasons are not defined by week 1, but if there's one thing that they are taking away from that is that their offense is going to want some points this week. And if Tampa Bay is not ready, then they could be, the first victim of that offense really getting up and going in 2021.
I think their offense is going to want to score a touchdown.
Oh, yeah, you think?
I think they're going to want to score a touchdown. So what better way to do it than against a division opponent, too? So, yeah, the Bucs going to have to be ready. Despite Jordan Whitehead coming back, like we talked about yesterday's short little video. Check that out, guys. It's something we sort of experimented with, sort of modeling it after James's show. But, yeah, gave a little injury update on Jordan Whitehead there. And, it'll be interesting to see how they fare because Atlanta's offense did give the Bucs fits last year. They gave them some trouble. And now, with the injury report coming out, Jason Pierre-Paul went from limited participation yesterday to not practicing today. He has a hand injury. I know everybody's going to be joking about it, whatever. But if he can't go, Joe Trina-Shoyinka is going to get a lot of looks, obviously, but that's also a loss. He's a very important piece of his defense, and like I said, it's just something about the Atlanta offense. And you could say, oh, but they don't have Julio Jones now. Well, Julio Jones didn't play in either of the matchups last year versus the Bucs, and the Falcons still put up 27 points both times. Especially in Atlanta, the Falcons really had a nice day, especially through the air. So. It'll be interesting to see the game plan that Todd Bowles comes up with this week.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, we talk about those matchups against Atlanta last year. Let's not forget the first game in Atlanta. The Bucs were down, 17 in the first half before they even knew it. Atlanta came out quick. The defense was not ready, and they were able to put plenty of points up on the scoreboard. I don't think the defense this week can have the slow start that they had against Dallas. I mean, obviously, Dallas offense is looked at as a lot better than Atlanta, but Atlanta is still one of those teams that can kind of catch you sleeping in the early part of the game if you are not prepared. Basically, the Bucs defense cannot afford the slow start that they had last Thursday. So when you talk about Todd Bowles and what he's going to be scheming up, JPP, a big part of that. We'll talk about him or any updates that we have. Of course, we'll let you guys know. But I'm just interested to see how they start. They need to start promptly. And if they don't, there is a very good chance that Atlanta can come out and get something going, and the Bucs are playing from behind for the first half. We've definitely seen it before.
Yeah, I think Atlanta, despite their struggles last week, they can still score points. Matt Ryan is a veteran quarterback, and we'll get into more in depth in this. We'll cover both the Atlanta offense and the Atlanta defense and see how the Bucs match up with both. But, I mean, they have a veteran quarterback. Calvin Ridley's a good wide receiver. Kyle Pitts is an exciting rookie, even though you and I have both said, let's chill out on, the whole Kyle Pitts thing. But I still think he's a good player. And even, Mike Davis, I think, is, a better option than Todd Gurley was last year for him. So they've even upgraded the running game a little bit. So they definitely can still put up points, and the Bucs are going to have to be ready. Because if the Bucs think this is going to be a pushover, then guess what? They're going to be the ones that are getting pushed over.
And I think the Bucs are, past the point of going into a game thinking it's going to be a pushover. I don't know if they ever were good enough to be that team. And when they finally became good enough to be that team, they had a quarterback who's going to snap them out of that just like that. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for them. It's just, making sure your communication is on point on defense, making sure everybody knows their role. With Jordan Whitehead coming back, I'm curious to see how up to speed he is with the rest of those guys out there. JPP, I wanted to talk about really quickly before we start to talk about what Atlanta can do on offense. JPP is a very interesting case because, like you said, he did not practice today. He was limited on Wednesday, didn't practice on Thursday, so obviously his status for Friday is going to be pretty telling. But between you and me, I feel pretty comfortable that JPP is going to be out there because, come on, dude, that's JPP. You know what I mean? We saw him have some off days last year, and maybe it's just one of those where he really needed the off day. But I think even if he's limited at practice tomorrow, I think he plays. Like that, for him to come out before the season and say that he's feeling healthy as a horse and he's feeling as good as he did 11 years ago, I think he's in a good spot. I think he'll play.
I would bet he probably plays, but it's it's never good to have limited participation and then have no participation. Cartier Walker said BA said SMB injury could be season ending with the shaking the head thing. So here's the thing. Bruce Arians really tried to cover all of his bases yesterday when he said that. Okay, he said 4 weeks to season ending. Okay, that really narrows it down, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah. That really narrows it down. So he could miss the whole season, but he also could miss only a little bit of time. I think it's just Bruce Arians trying to cover it up. If he tells you 5 weeks, and it ends up taking SMB 8 weeks to get back, then it looks like he's the bad guy and he's the one who lied. But if he tells you, it could be season ending, and SMB comes back after 9 weeks, you're like, okay, it's not season ending. See how he did that. So that's what that's about. Okay, I'm sure they already pretty much have an idea of where he's gonna be, and I think Arians actually went on a radio show either yesterday or today and said that he believes it's gonna be 4 to 6 weeks. So, I wouldn't put too much stock in BA mentioning that. I know whenever somebody mentions season ending, it gets people worried, but I wouldn't put too much stock into that. So if you wanted to, Rhett, we could finally sort of get into this Atlanta offense, and one that I was expecting to do a whole lot more last week, and they just didn't.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to talk about first with this Atlanta offense kind of goes hand in hand with, the status of JPP, that defensive line, this offensive line for the Falcons. Well, on a surface level, they are considerably worse than what Dallas put on the field, even though they were missing their right guard. And I think that's probably being kind about it because Matt Ryan was not safe last week. And I know Philly has put together kind of an underrated defense, but this is the defending Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl champion defense. It's one of those things where I can see it being a very, very long afternoon for Matt Ryan, regardless of whether JPP's out there or not. If he is not, let's say he's not, even though I believe he is. If he is not, I'm very excited to see what Joe Tryon can do because obviously that's the guy who's probably going to step up the most in that slot, I would think. I mean, we know Todd Bowles has some different looks, so he'll move some guys around and do whatever he has to do. But Joe Tryon, a guy who in week 1 did not record a tackle, I don't think the stat sheet really did his night justice because he had his nose in the play pretty much every single time he was on the field, it seemed like. He was just kind of maybe the last guy to the pile. But I'm curious to see what he can do. Even if JPP is out there, I'm curious to see what Joe Tryon can do because he got a lot of work early against Dallas and then kind of feathered out. But I'm curious to see what he looks like. I'm curious to see what all these guys look like because this is not a very good offensive line. And that's just, always going to focus on the trenches first, and that's what I'm looking at for Atlanta. This is a huge, huge mismatch for them.
I'm going to be blunt. This offensive line sucks. Okay? This Falcons offensive line is terrible. They have a bunch of young players, and none of them are at the stage right now where they can actually make a difference. Okay? Maybe maybe in 2 or 3 years, not now, right? They got Caleb McGarry in the first round. They drafted Jalen Mayfield. Jalen Mayfield last week.
Jalen Mayfield, man, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, what were you going to say?
Jalen Mayfield is who I'm thinking of, where he put out a tweet that said, "Listen, if you don't want anybody to touch your quarterback, you draft 77 or something like that." Right? Wow. He put out a tweet before the draft basically saying that if you draft me, nobody's going to touch your quarterback. And then somebody took that tweet and then put the picture of Matt Ryan laying face down and 77 just standing there with his arms in the air. That was pretty funny.
So his PFF grade, and I want to start doing this for offensive linemen. I know PFF's grades aren't great, but they just do sort of provide some context on how a player's day was. His PFF grade last week, 28.8 was his total PFF grade. Yikes. His pass blocking grade, this is a accurate pass blocking grade that he received, 1.4.
Oh, no.
That was his pass blocking grade.
That's got to be... I mean, obviously, it's the lowest end of the spectrum you can get, but those just strike me as historically bad numbers. Like, I don't know how long PFF has been grading plays like this since, the early 2010s, maybe, they came around.
Something like that, yeah.
But, I wonder what their worst grade ever is in different categories, because a 1.6... when you go on a scale of up to, I don't even know what their scale goes up to.
It's 1.4. You were giving him 0.2. It's even worse.
God, yeah. That's what I get for giving him some credit. That doesn't sound very good.
He also committed 2 penalties. So he had a horrible day. So, okay, but the rest of the offensive line did great, right? No. Caleb McGarry was their right tackle, 46.9 Pro Football Focus grade. And then Matt Hennessy was their center, 52.7 Pro Football Focus grade, a 20.0 pass blocking grade. This offensive line struggled. And what is the strength of the Eagles defense? The front seven. That's the strength of their defense, and the Eagles dominated them. What's the strength of the Bucs defense? The front seven. So, I think you could see a pretty rough day, and I don't know if this Falcons offensive line, this might be one of the last teams that I think the Falcons offensive line would want to see, and just the Falcons in general would want to see after a loss like that.
G Vegas in the live chat with probably the line of the year so far. He said Vita Vea is going to lift up Hennessy like a bottle of Hennessy and down him like one too. I like that.
He probably will.
I said before the Dallas game, and I quote, there is no reason these guys on the defense should not be eating. And we talked about how they didn't get a whole lot of pressure. I know Dak was uncomfortable for the most part, and the pressure was there, but they just weren't able to hit home. That's because Dak Prescott can make a move on you and make you miss, right? This week, I will reiterate what I said, and I mean it 110% more this week than I did last week. There is no reason that these guys should not be out there making their money. This is a mismatch on the offensive line for Atlanta to where everybody out there is just going to be struggling all day. If you line up Vita Vea one-on-one with the center, he's going to get to the quarterback. If you don't have an extra guy blocking Joe Tryon on the edge because they don't see him trot up at the end of the play, he's going to be getting after your quarterback. There is enough athleticism on this D-line, and especially now that it's week 2 and they have a full 60 minutes of football under their belt, you have to come out and start better than you did last week. That's for damn sure, because Atlanta is one of those teams, like we said at the beginning of the show, that can kind of get you sleeping if you're not prepared. But as this defense starts to come together over the course of the season, the first 4 or 5 games before they're playing 100% like they would like to play, this is one of those games where it's a little bit easier than the next one, because next week you got the Rams, and you've got Matt Stafford, who has been balling, son. I know it's only been 1 game, but I'm very interested to see what he does this week. So, I just there's no reason these guys shouldn't be getting after Matt Ryan all afternoon.
I mean, Dallas has some talent along their offensive line, even if they were missing their best one.
Oh, yeah.
They have some real talent, and the Falcons just don't. I mean, their best offensive lineman is Jake Matthews, and Jake Matthews is a worse version of Donovan Smith, basically. He's like an average tackle, pretty much. Like we've called Donovan Smith an average tackle. You know, he's been playing ever since Tom Brady got here. He's been playing like an above average tackle. Hasn't been playing like an elite one, but has been playing like an above average tackle. I think Jake Matthews is like a average tackle, and if that's your best offensive lineman, you're in some trouble. And especially Matt Ryan, he ain't outrunning nobody. So, so let's get on to Matt Ryan last year, because I did want to bring this up. I thought this was interesting. Now, I will say Arthur Smith is the guy there now, is the head coach. New play caller, new everything. It's all new. But Matt Ryan versus the Bucs last year had some success. Like, he really did. Week 15 was his best one. He was 34 for 49, 356 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and no interceptions. The Falcons did not commit a turnover in that game, yet still lost the game. And then week 17, a little bit worse, 29 for 44, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Falcons themselves had 2 turnovers, but Matt Ryan had 0 turnovers against the Bucs. So in 2 games against the Bucs, he hasn't thrown an interception and also has not fumbled. They're going to have to get to him and get some fumbles or get some interceptions. It feels like forever since the last time they intercepted Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
I understand Matt Ryan's not a guy who's going to be a gunslinger right like that and put the ball in harm's way. But at the same time, like, get some turnovers, and generating. And also, he didn't throw an interception last week either. The Falcons, I don't believe, had a turnover last week, which makes their blowout loss even more impressive.
Was Carlton Davis in 2019 the last interception this defense got on Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I think it was.
Atlanta?
Yeah, I think it might have been. Yeah.
That's when Carlton Davis kind of turned the corner.
That was the first game of this versus Atlanta that year. It was in Atlanta, and then the last game was the last game of the year with the pick 6. That was the last interception, I believe it was. It was Carlton Davis. So it's been three whole games that they haven't intercepted him.
Yeah.
So it seems like somebody's due. It definitely feels like somebody's due. Now I do believe the fumble, though, they did forced Matt Ryan to fumble in that last game. If you remember, Devin White scooping it up. So they didn't intercept him, but they did force him to fumble in that last game in 2019.
Okay.
So let's go on to I want to bring up, since we're talking about last year, I just want to bring up one more stat from last year, and that was Calvin Ridley versus the Bucs secondary last year. I'm only going to bring up week 15. Week 17, he did okay, but week 15, they couldn't stop him. 10 catches, 163 yards, and 1 touchdown. And like we said, Julio Jones did not play. So it's not like, all the attention was on Julio. No, he didn't play. So they're going to have to contain Calvin Ridley. And Carlton Davis struggled a little bit against Calvin Ridley last year. So that'll be an interesting matchup to see as well.
Yeah. I mean, he was in a similar situation with Julio not playing either of those games last year. So he was kind of their number one. But like this year, Calvin Ridley is Atlanta's number 1 wide receiver. So we're talking about stats, right? Let's talk about Carlton Davis, the last person to intercept Matt Ryan, for Tampa Bay at least. Carlton Davis against Calvin Ridley for most of the game is a matchup that I'm pretty excited to see. Carlton coming off of a pretty strong performance against Dallas. I know that we talked about the secondary giving up, 450 yards, but for Carlton Davis, he had 3 pass breakups, an interception, and then on top of that, a 13.9 passer rating when he was targeted. He is going to, go out there and basically decide if he can call himself the best corner in the league for the second straight week in a row. Because we talked about the confidence that these guys are playing with. Carlton Davis is right up here. And I don't know if a lot of people are recognizing the week 1 performance that he had against a pretty good wide receiver trio. But, this week is his chance to keep that record rolling and to, make sure people are noticing him in a positive light. I'm going to be watching him very closely on defense.
Yeah, he's going to be tasked with shutting down Calvin Ridley. And I'm not sure if Carlton Davis is going to follow Calvin Ridley. I'm not sure if wherever Ridley is, Davis is going to be. I don't know. I'm not Todd Bowles. We'll find out Sunday. But I think it would be smart. You put your best corner, especially when you're down a corner. You put your best corner on the other team's best receiver. So that makes a lot of sense. But they have a few new pieces that I do want to discuss here. The biggest one, obviously, being Kyle Pitts, who, like I said, on the show, we have been like, okay, let's pump the brakes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's a physical freak. I still believe he was one of the best players in the draft. And it's on an Atlanta team lacking Julio Jones, lacking a red zone offense. The red zone offense has been brutal last year, and then this year they had 2 tries. Their first 2 drives against Philly, I watched the game. They drove right down the field on Philly, but they couldn't score. They had to settle for 2 field goals inside the 20. So their red zone offense has been brutal. Kyle Pitts, 4 catches, 31 yards on 8 targets. So very pedestrian day. And I think if the Bucs hold him to that, I think Todd Bowles will be very happy. Because I think a big part of the Falcons' game plan this week is going to be getting that big tight end involved. Arthur Smith, his offense is predicated on a lot of 2 tight end stuff. And I think a lot of that's going to be getting Kyle Pitts involved this week.
And that was going to be my question to you is Kyle Pitts going to be a factor this week? Now, I'm not going to be starting him in fantasy this week, so he probably will, right? He'll go off for like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. He'll have the greatest tight end performance in Atlanta history because I didn't start him in fantasy.
As long as the Bucs win, though, who would really care?
Yeah, nobody cares. I think Bucs are winning this game by 10. But
wow, spoil your prediction already.
Yeah, man. I guess maybe I'll clean it up once we get closer to the score prediction. We got to do the checklist and everything, finish this game preview, and then I'll evaluate how I'm feeling. Because I kind of like to do the score predictions off the cusp, right? Like right at the end of what we're talking about. Maybe I can see how I'm feeling about this game. But Kyle Pitts, I'll tell you, dude, I do think that Atlanta's going to make it a priority because if Carlton Davis has a day against Calvin Ridley or whoever they match him up against, right? Maybe he's out there just struggling to find the football. Kyle Pitts is going to be a priority for them. But I look at who's going to be on him most of the day. It's going to be big 5'4" Levante David probably when they man up. And I look at the way that 54 was able to hold his own against Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl. Now, we know this defense is not playing at the same pace that they were in, week 21 last year, I guess that technically was. So I'm curious to see what kind of matchup that presents. I mean, Kyle Pitts is a rookie, but like you said, he is an athletic freak. So I think Levante David's going to be critical in slowing him down. But that's another one of those matchups on defense I'm excited to see because I think Levante can do it. Like, if I have, faith in anybody on that defense after all these years, it's going to be 54. So I'm curious to see how that goes for them.
Well, one thing with an Arthur Smith offense is 2 tight ends, and it's a lot of running.
Yeah.
The Falcons are a team that have not run a whole lot in the past. Obviously, they had Dirk Cutter's offensive coordinator the last few years, and before that, it was Steve Sarkisian. It hasn't been a lot of running. Last week, 24 designed runs against Philly. Also, they had more runs than that because Matt Ryan, I think, had 3 scrambles that are considered runs, but actual designed runs, they had 24 of them versus Philly last week. So he's wanting to establish the run. If I were Arthur Smith, I would caution against that against Tampa Bay because if you do that, and I watched the game and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was a 3rd and 8. The Falcons were on their own. They were backed up on their own 11-yard line. They ran the ball. They ran the ball for a 3-yard gain, then punted. What are we doing here? Are you serious? If you try to do that against Tampa, you're going to be done. So I'm Arthur Smith. I'm going to caution you not to do it, but also at the same time, go ahead, do what you want. See how that works out for you. But also another guy that I want to bring up is it's always a guy I think is always one of those players that is a solid player, but is a very niche player. Cordero Patterson had 7 carries for 54 yards. Yes, the wide receiver Cordero Patterson. They've been using them all over the place, whether it's Chicago or Atlanta. He kind of made some plays against the Bucs last year when he was with Chicago on Thursday Night Football. So I'm going to be interested to see how the box score against when he played for the Bears wouldn't really show it against the Bucs. But if you watch the game, he made an impact. I believe he made a few plays on when the Bears kicked the field goal to take the lead on that final drive. He made a few plays. And he looked good last week. So just keep an eye on him. But I don't know. I don't know if the Falcons' offensive line is going to give Matt Ryan or the running backs, whoever, Mike Davis or Cordero Patterson, whoever it may be, I just don't think they're going to give him any time. And I will say real quick, the Falcons had over 100 yards rushing against the Bucs last year in Week 17, and obviously Matt Ryan had a nice day. That was without Devin White and Shaq Barrett. Both of those guys were on the COVID list at that point. So just to put it in some context, that was without two important pieces on the defense, which will now be playing in this game.
Yeah. And, I mean, we talk about Atlanta's offensive line and their run game. I know Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson, you said, had kind of a nice game last week. 124 yards on the ground for them last week.
100 yards in the first half.
Yeah. So, I mean, Atlanta's one of those teams where they're definitely going to try a little bit harder to commit to the run. I think Dallas tried to run it 6 times and realized we're not going to be able to do this, and then relied on Dak Prescott for the rest of the evening. I just don't think Atlanta, their offense, is going to allow them to do that for an entire game. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, if they want to run the ball, just like you said, bro, go for it. Do what you want to do.
Good luck.
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you what not to do. And what you don't want to do against the Buccaneers is try and run the damn football, because they are still the reigning, defending #1 run defense in the NFL.
All right, Paul Heyman.
Yeah, and have been for 2 weeks straight. So, I know Mike Davis can make a little bit of something happen back there. It seems like their rushing attack is going to be better this year than it was last year, but, those designed runs are not going to fool anybody on Tampa Bay's defense. Talking about the Buccaneers, I think on offense, right? We've just about covered everything for
yeah,
Atlanta.
I mean, there's not a whole lot. Obviously, on the Bucs defense, obviously people are going to be watching Jamel Dean. They're going to be watching how he fares against a guy like Russell Gage, and we'll see. There's this, like, I even saw it a little bit in the chat here. There's like this like narrative that the Bucs secondary just absolutely sucks now for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, a lot of people think that that's what we said, too, because they like to read the titles of our podcast but not listen to them.
Right.
And then go chirp on social media about it.
That's 90% of Twitter. So
Right.
If it's not a juicy headline that they like, it's, it's trash.
That's what gets the clicks, baby.
Of course. But, it's weird because, like, you would think the Bucs secondary is, like, the worst. Like, the worst. Like, do you realize Dallas's offense is legit good? Dak Prescott is a top 6 or 7 quarterback in the entire NFL. Like, it's not like they played some scrub offense here. It's not like it was Andy Dalton and the Bears going in.
It wasn't Taylor Heineke and the Washington football team.
No, I mean, even though Taylor Heineke played fine against the Bucs. But, it's people are acting like this secondary is just garbage. Dude, if they were as bad as people say they were, no matter what the type of defense they played, however they performed last year in the playoffs, if this secondary was as bad as it was, they weren't winning the Super Bowl. So, if it was as bad as people say it was, they weren't winning nothing last year. So, like, just relax. It's one game. Like, it's one game. Just chill out. Then that will pretty much conclude our defensive thing. It could be a massacre for the Falcons' offensive line. It's just, if I were Arthur Smith, I would look at what Dallas did. The only issue with what Dallas did is that Dallas has a better offensive line than you, and Zeke's probably a better run blocker, or not run blocker, pass blocker than Mike Davis is. So that could complicate some things. But if you try to establish a run, you're going to find out pretty quickly that ain't going to work.
Oh, yeah. Taking a look at the Buccaneers on offense, I know this is the moment that everybody's been waiting for. Whenever we can talk about Tom Brady, it is a good day on the podcast. But looking at this team on offense coming into this game, I'm curious to not only see how they start, but not even so much Tom Brady, who actually got himself FedEx Air Player of the Week for his baller performance in Week 1. Don't even worry about the 2 picks. None of those were his fault. He was surgical. But aside from Brady in this receiving core, I'm very curious to see how Ronald Jones goes out there and starts early. Head coach Bruce Arians said this week that Rojo was kind of harder on himself than anyone else was after his fumble. Like, he kind of, put the towel on his head, sat down, and nobody really told him to get back into the game. Like, it seems like it was more so he was just very, very hard on himself. But regardless of the situation, BA came out and said that Rojo's going to be getting the start this week. These carries are going to be critical for Ronald Jones. and I'd like to see him do something. I'd like to see him not fumble the ball. I think that's a start, right? Not fumble the ball, and if it's thrown to you, just try and catch it. Try and get it, pick up a couple of yards.
I wouldn't even try it.
But for his confidence,
why throw him the ball? Why throw him the ball?
Yeah, don't throw him the ball. I'd like to see Gio Bernard get involved a little bit more this week. I know Bruce said that he has ironed himself out as the third down back, but I'd like to
play on third downs.
Yeah, I'd like to see Gio Bernard get a little bit more involved this week. But Ronald Jones, man, let's talk about it. I think these carries are very critical for Ronald Jones, not only for his confidence, but his position in that running back room. I'd like to see him establish himself as the starter going forward this week. I know we'll still get the rotation throughout the game, but I'd like to see Rojo with the first running back with the ball in his hands every single week. And I think some strong carries for him at the beginning of this week's game could really do that for him.
Yeah, you're definitely going to see. Like, it's not like, Jones isn't going to be the bell cow all of a sudden. I agree. He's the best running back on the team. He is, which makes it like even more frustrating that come on, man, just like the stupid stuff. It's almost like OJ Howard. Like, he'll do so many great things, but then there'll be one thing where you're like, come on, man, like, seriously, like, just clean it up, right? Like, you're not a rookie anymore. This is your fourth year in the NFL. Like, it's time to clean this stuff up. So like I said, I still have faith in him. But I wouldn't even attempt to throw him or Leonard Fournette the ball. The only person in that running back room I would even attempt to throw the ball to is Gio Bernard, because none of the other ones can catch worth it. You know what? I mean, it's awful.
Here is a sentence that I never thought I would say. I get more anxious when I see Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette get targeted out of the backfield.
It's brutal.
Than I do seeing Ryan Suckup line up for a field goal.
Yeah. Yeah, every time they threw to Leonard Fournette, I was assuming he was dropping it. Well, after that drop screen, I assumed something horrible was going to happen.
And it's not even just the drops. Like, obviously the drops you can deal with, and as much as they suck and they stall drives most of the time, you can deal with it, right? But it's just the fear of a turnover. Like, it just scares the shit out of me. Like, it ruined Tom Brady's perfect game last week. And I hate to bring up TB12 again, but like, Leonard Fournette doesn't bobble the ball. It's one less pick on his stat sheet. I think he leads the NFL in interceptions if he's not like right behind Trevor Lawrence right now.
I think, Lawrence had 3, right? We talked about that before the game, before the show. So Lawrence had 3. It just feels wrong whenever they touch the ball.
It's scary.
It's a simple pass. It's literally a simple pass that, like, you're pretty sure they're gonna catch, but even when they do, you're like, you're like, oh no.
And when they do catch it, I feel like it takes them a year to like grab it and then look forward and then get ready to start running, right? Like, it takes them a few seconds to catch it.
Almost like neither one of them are receiving backs. It's almost like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not an expert, but
so real quick, let's focus shift our focus, to Tom Brady. And Tom Brady versus not necessarily the Falcons defense, but Tom Brady versus the Falcons defensive coordinator. Dean Pease is the current Falcons defensive coordinator. He was a Patriots assistant, I believe, from 2004 to 2009. Knows Tom Brady pretty well. He held Tom Brady's Patriots to 10 points in 2018 when he was the Titans defensive coordinator. It was Tom Brady's worst game of the year. Also, in 2012, when Dean Pease was with the Ravens, he had eliminated Tom Brady from the playoffs with the Ravens when they went on that Super Bowl run. And also in 2019, DP's defense eliminated Tom Brady in his last ever game as a Patriot when Dean Pease was with the Titans. Tom Brady has struggled against Dean Pease's defense. One thing I will say, all those defenses that Dean Pease had a heck of a lot more talent than this Atlanta one does. And the offenses that Tom Brady was on also weren't nearly as talented as this. They were talented. Like, 2012, he still had almost like prime Wes Welker and like a lot of guys. Danny Amendola wasn't there yet, but I forget exactly who was there. Like Shane Vereen, like he was still good back then.
Yeah.
So like, Brady had some real pieces back then, and obviously 2019 he really didn't, but like Tom Brady has struggled against this particular defensive coordinator and this particular defensive scheme. However, sometimes just talent just outweighs it, man. And the Falcons just don't have the same talent on defense as those past defenses had. So I'm not very worried about this offense.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see the receiver core, one guy in particular, Mike Evans. I'd like to see Mike Evans get back in the mix this week, and I think he will.
He will, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the dumbest thing. People overreact.
Yeah.
It's like a yearly tradition. People overreacting to Mike Evans, to Mike Evans week 1 stuff. Look, guys, he had more catches and more yards this year's week 1 than he did last year's, and there's an extra game this year. Relax.
Well, whenever people talk about Mike Evans or any wide receiver for that matter, just kind of having a rough week, regardless of if it's, he's double teamed the entire game, he doesn't get the targets. If he doesn't show up for your fantasy team, people usually start freaking out. And I think the easiest solution to that is by, you have your phone in your hand most of the time. Go to google.com, type in Buccaneers roster, and just take a look at the wide receiver room, right? You've got...
Or the tight end room.
Listen, folks, just take a step back, take a deep breath. I was a little concerned about Mike Evans after week 1. I remember on the post-game show, I was like, man, Mike didn't really look like himself out there tonight. There were a couple of passes he could have tried to get that he didn't. It's week 1, and I was overreacting. You know what I mean? It was an emotional reaction right after the game. But now that we've taken some time to just collect ourselves and look at the situation that the Bucs are in, we have talked endlessly about the talent on this offense. I'm sure whenever you guys talk to your friends and start having a football conversation and you talk about the Bucs and you talk about this stacked offense, it's one of the things you talk about is that we have wide receivers for days. We have 3 wide receiver ones on this team. Mike Evans will get his, but I definitely think it's going to be coming this week. I'd like a big game for Mike this week because I just don't think there's anybody on the Falcons defense that can really slow him down.
Start Mike Evans in your fantasy leagues. Start Antonio Brown in your fantasy leagues.
Start all of them. Start Chris Godwin, AB, and Mike Evans. I don't have Evans in my fantasy league this year, only because I know that he's not the kind of guy who goes off every single game. So I've got Chris Godwin, and I'm sure as hell starting him this week.
There you go. I actually have Mike Evans. So, I don't worry. I wouldn't really be worrying about him. I think Antonio Brown is going to have a huge day. Antonio Brown in 2 games versus the Falcons last year, 16 catches, 231 yards, and 3 touchdown catches.
And that was both of those games were in the middle of just that ridiculous run that he had at the end of that season. Mm-hmm. How many games straight was it with a touchdown?
4.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about Mike Evans. I'm not. I'm not. I don't even want to really talk about that, honestly.
I think we're wasting these people's time.
Yeah, I really do. I really do think it's a waste of time talking about Mike Evans. He's he's one of the best players. There's also other good players. Are you seriously going to be angry if the Bucs win, but Mike Evans doesn't get as many catches as you'd like him to? Are you kidding me? Do you think he cares?
No. Well, if there's anything we know about...
He's been losing his whole career. You think he cares?
He's been losing his whole career, and he continues to restructure his contract. If there's one thing we know for sure about Mike Evans, it's that he is the ultimate team first guy. Mike does not give a damn about his stats as long as the Bucs are winning every single week. He has said that before. He'll say it time and time again. But, there's still plenty of time. Also, the Buccaneers have 16 more games. If you really think about it, we got a full season's worth of games, right? So, these other wide receivers are just getting a head start on their 1,000-yard season. That's all. Mike will get his.
Yeah, he's always going to get his. He had 1 catch for 2 yards week 1 last year with 1 less game and still finished with 1,000 yards and didn't even finish that week 17 game either. So, relax. Relax. Anyways, moving on. I just have one thing on my notes here. It's Falcons pass rush with a question mark because, like, what pass rush? It seems like the Falcons are basically like the Saints with cornerbacks. It seems like the Falcons have been searching for a good pass rush for as long as the Saints have been searching for a good number 2 cornerback. It seems like the Saints just cannot find a second corner. And it seems like the Falcons can never find a pass rush. And it seems like the Panthers just can't ever find a good team. But the Falcons never, every single year, they never have a good pass rush. It's always an issue. They have one guy on the defensive line that, like, I consider good, and that's Grady Jarrett. Everybody else, it's like, whatever. Like, whatever, man. Like, they're a bunch of dudes. Like, I don't think there's going to be much trouble unless,
they're just a bunch of dudes.
That's all they are. Like, it just dudes playing ball, I guess, getting paid to suck. I don't know. But like, I'm not worried. I'm really not worried about, I'm more worried about the Bucs, and we'll get into the checklist. There's one thing that I'm more worried about that's going to stop the Bucs. The Falcons ain't going to stop the Bucs. I'll tell you that right now. The Falcons are not going to stop the Bucs, but the Bucs can.
Yeah.
The Bucs can stop themselves. But
Yeah,
the Falcons
that's very true.
The Falcons are not going to stop the Bucs on offense. Maybe the Falcons offense has a good day against the Bucs defense, but in terms of Bucs offense versus Falcons defense, it ain't happening.
Before we break this thing down and get to the weekly checklist to close out our game preview show, I do want to mention, I'm glad that you brought it up, but like the penalties, right? It's been a long time that we've had to talk about penalties coming into a game because aside from, Chicago last year, after that Chicago game, this was probably one of the most well-behaved rosters in the NFL. And when you have Tom Brady on your team, typically that happens. And sometimes you don't get calls that you should get calls for, but I don't know nothing about that. Let's talk about the penalties this week. You better believe that the Buccaneers have gone back, checked the game film, yelled at whoever they needed to make sure that they come out here and try to play a flawless game, right? No penalties is the goal. They were able to do it one game last year. I think they should be cleaned up in that area. Like, I don't think that should be a concern this week. For a team that knows when it needs to clean up the crap, that's just exactly what they've gone in and done, I think, this last week. I don't think we should be seeing any Bucs beating Bucs this week because we definitely saw it last week and it almost cost them the game at a few times.
Well, no, but I mean, still expect penalties. Like,
oh yeah, sure.
I don't really think it's fair to expect 0 penalties, but
you can't. Well, for the Bucs, the goal is 0 penalties, but
the goal for every NFL team is 0 penalties.
Exactly, but you can't predict what kind of mood the refs are going to be in that day.
I mean, it's also the penalties, man. Like, sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes a guy holds. Sometimes a guy has pass interference. It happens. So sometimes they're intentional, but sometimes a pass interference call is better than a potential touchdown.
Yeah.
Sometimes a guy's beat so bad the holders grab the dude, and it'll be pass interference. Rather have that than just 6 points on the board. So now I guess we can get into the checklist. That was number 1. Penalties. Just gonna go quickly over that. Just limit them. You had 11 last week, which was tied for the most in the Brady era. Not in the Brady era, really. A team that Tom Brady's on.
The Bucs.
11 penalties. 11 penalties for Tom Brady's career. 11 penalties is the most penalties that Tom Brady teams have ever had. So it's tied for the most. And then the Falcons had 12 penalties last week. So they've had their own penalty issues. So I'm sure they've been preaching the same thing, right, about the penalties. So it'll be interesting to see how both teams play out. 2, use Giovanni Bernard how he's supposed to. Use him for what you signed him for. On third and 10, I should not be seeing Leonard Fournette out there. I shouldn't. G Vegas, I think, under 6 penalties, I think that's a realistic goal. Oh, yeah. I think if you 4 or 5, I think anything more than that is a little bit much, but under 6, almost basically cutting it in half would be my goal for this week. But yeah, going back to Bernard, just, why isn't he out there? Like, apparently Bruce Arians says he's 100% healthy. I know Bruce Arians doesn't always tell the truth. He doesn't have to always tell the truth, right? It's not like the media is not a lie detector test. He doesn't have to tell the truth. But if he's healthy, there's no reason he shouldn't be out there. So not just in the 2-minute offense, not just on a 3rd and 17 when you throw a screen to try and get better field position to punt. Like, get him out there, like, in, like, passing situations. Maybe give him a carry. Like, he's had experience carrying the football before. And then my last one is just make that Atlanta O-line just have a miserable day. Just make it overwhelming for them. It's going to be tough for the O-line to begin with, and they're going to sort of be like, let's hope this goes good. By the end of the second quarter, by halftime, they should be saying, this is not going good. I mean, it should be a mauling. If it's not, I will be very concerned about this defense. If Matt Ryan sits back there and has all day and is able to find Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts, I will be very, very concerned about this defense, because not saying that Matt Ryan sucks or Calvin Ridley or Kyle Pitts sucks, the offensive line of the Falcons should not be able to give Matt Ryan that much time to find those guys. So if the Bucs pass rush can't get home consistently, that's a huge concern for me this week.
I like it. I like the energy. I think this is the most one-sided game preview you've ever done on this show. And obviously the confidence of being Super Bowl champs helps with that. But
I just don't think the Falcons are any good.
No, yeah. This is, I mean, if the Bucs were not a good team, this is still a team that you should win against, right?
Yeah, this is if the Bucs were an average team, this is a team that you should beat, and if you want to be, they got a matchup against the Rams next week. That game could potentially decide who's going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC at the end of the season. If you want to be the number 1 seed in the NFC, you can't lose a game like this on Sunday. You can't do it. If you want to be the number 1 seed in the NFC, even if you want to even win a division, you can't lose to the Falcons. Not on home turf. Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, there's no way. You can't do it. If you want to be taken seriously as a team that's going to be the 1 seed and going to get home field advantage and going to win your division, just beat up on this team. Beat up on this team.
Yeah. They're definitely going to be the punching bag for the NFC South this year, so hopefully the Bucs can go out there and deliver on Sunday. I will wrap up the rest of the weekly checklist just with a couple here, reiterating what you said earlier. Get after Matt Ryan. There is no reason this defense should not be in his face for most of the afternoon. I understand that every now and again he's going to be able to make a play. He's not a slouch quarterback. He's going to get the ball out of the pocket pretty quickly, and he'll probably do that most of the day. But make it a problem for him, right? This offensive line is not good. They're not going to be able to hold you all day, and they're damn sure not going to be able to hold you every single play because eventually they'll get called. I know Dallas kind of held us every single play.
That might be the only chance Atlanta's got. Just hold on every play. But that might actually be their game plan. Hold on every play.
Because they can't throw a flag on every play.
They can't do it every play. So if you hold, then you'll be able to play well, sure.
Yeah, I think that's just how some of these offensive lines prepare for the Bucs. Just listen. Go out there, do what you got to do.
I think that's how seeing all NFL games around the league. I think that's how most offensive lines prepare themselves.
Listen, go out there.
It's not a bad strategy. It's not a bad strategy.
Sure.
The refs are not going to throw a flag on.
It's going to piss a lot of people off, but it's not a bad strategy.
Yeah, because the refs are not throwing a flag on every single play. Not happening.
Oh, the game will take 7 hours at that point.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing on the weekly checklist here. Start quickly. Make sure you are prepared. This defense cannot afford the slow start that they had against Dallas. I know the Atlanta offense is not as good, but that's the reason you should start a little bit faster. We also saw this Atlanta offense get up on the Bucs pretty quickly last year in their first matchup of the two that they had in 2020. So just be prepared. Start quickly. Be prompt. Make sure your communication is on key, and everybody is ready to go out there and do their job. And the Bucs should come away with a win. Let's do some score predictions and get out of here. Drop your score predictions in the live chat. We'll read off a couple of them after we give ours. But I'll go first. I know I said that I have the Bucs winning this game by 10. At least 10. And I think my final score is going to look something like this. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 35. Atlanta 21. I wanted to give them 24, but No. On the drive that they would have gotten a field goal, I think Carlton Davis gets a pick. So I'll go 21 for Atlanta. But yeah, I got the Bucs by 14.
Okay, well, I have 38-21 Bucs.
Wow.
So I'm not
holding back.
No, I'm not. Tom Brady's 9-0 against the Falcons in his career. He doesn't lose to the Falcons. I saw some people were like, "Oh, well, this Atlanta offense can't put up any points." Look, they're gonna put up points. Okay, they're not gonna put up just 6 points again. That's not going to happen. Okay, they're going to score a touchdown probably. So 38-21. If you're a betting man, bet the over. I think Tom Brady's going to have another big day. I think Antonio Brown and Mike Evans are going to be in for big days. And I predict Antoine Winfield will get his first interception of the season.
Hell yeah. I like that. If you are a betting guy and you're looking to take the over, I know just the place to do it. Good sponsor of the show, betonline.ag. If you go download their app or sign up on their website, you will get an extra 50% bonus on your first deposit. Official sponsor of the Cannon Fire podcast. Brian Shaw says 41-23 Bucs. G Vegas, the moderator holding it down, says 38-17 Bucs. I like these score predictions, man. It should hopefully go the way that we think it will. I know we thought
if it doesn't, my expectations for this team will drop significantly.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see, but I think the Bucs should have no problem going out there and handling their business as long as you come away with a W and advance to 2-0. That's all I care about.
Yeah. And real quick, when I say expectations drop, I don't mean I'm like, oh, the season's over. They're going to go, 9-8. No, I just mean, my expectations of being a top 2 seed, my expectations of winning the division, those chances to me will drop if they struggle to win this game.
Well,
if it comes down to a Ryan Suckup field goal at the end, that is not good.
And to a lot of people that is not you and I mean, a lot of people who aren't even Bucs fans, the Bucs are the best team in the NFL right now. And I think they're going to have to play up to that standard until, we can kind of temper our expectations or kind of find out what it looks like this season, because I don't think anybody really truly knows until the Bucs lose a game what that game might look like, how it goes down, whatever the case may be. But as of right now, the Bucs are the best team in the NFL, and they have to play up to that namesake, I think. So I get what you mean. I know that you're not going to expect them to, oh, yep, season's over.
I might.
Yeah, you might. I know how you get. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. All of our people holding it down on YouTube: Willie Beeman, the moderator; G Vegas, Brian Shaw, Chris Cole, Tapazio, I believe is another name. That's a new one. Neil is back in here as well, and anybody else that I may have missed. Thank you guys so much for checking out the show this week. Follow us on social media: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. After the game on Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be just about 7 weeks away from the first ever Cannon Fire watch party that is going to be at Berry House Beer Company. You can see the shirt that I'm rocking. This is the best logo of all time, right? I mean, Berry House is a great name in itself, but their logo is literally a beer, or hold on, excuse me. Say this 5 times fast. It's a bear holding beers, double fisting, just big ass mugs of beer. And he's got his little German overalls on as well. It's going to be a good time. We'd love to see you there. Week 9, the Bucs are playing Washington. November 14th, right?
Yep, it's week 10.
Yep, week 10. Oh, yeah, thank you. Week 10. But it should be a good time. We're going to be out there doing a pregame, postgame show. Our good buddy, Mr. Bucs Nation, will be out there. A couple of other guys you might know will be out there. So it really should be a good time. Our guys Wingbox going to be handling the food part of it. The best food truck in Tampa. I'm not even biased, guys. Like this, I eat a lot of food. All right, look at me. I eat a lot of chicken wings. I have had just about every chicken wing that somebody says is, anywhere in Tampa where somebody's like, oh, these wings are next level. I got to make sure I go scope it out and try it, right? Guys, I'm telling you, it does not get any better than the Wingbox. I have been eating at Wingbox consistently since 2015. That was the first time I had this food truck, and it was their first year of operation. They were actually in the St. Petersburg World's Largest Food Truck Festival when that came around. I think 2015 was the first year they did it. That was the first time I had it, and I'm telling you guys, it changed my life, and it will change yours too. At the first ever Cannon Fire Watch Party, hope to see you guys there. But that's the show. Thank you guys so much for checking it out this week. We will talk to you after the game. Will we have a special guest? I don't know. We got to figure it out. I know we've been teasing a special guest for like 3 weeks now, and people are probably pissed off because I think we're lying about it. But I promise we're just trying to get the schedules worked out. I don't want to give up. No, I don't want to give away too much information. But this other person kind of has their own schedule. You know what I mean? They got their own stuff they got to do sometimes, and like we just have to coordinate. And unfortunately, you know, the cards haven't fallen the way that we would like. But I'm telling you, it's going to happen soon. It will. But regardless of if they are there or not, we're going to talk to you guys Sunday after the game for our post-game show. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast, brought to you by Bet Online. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you guys Sunday after the game. And until then, as always, go Bucs.